Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame It's a Small Town podcast, sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today is a longtime Burlingame resident, business owner, and currently co-owner of Baywood Capital Property Management, located at 330 Primrose Road in Burlingame. As my guest likes to say, he has gone from one end of doing business on Primrose Road to the other end. Many of you know Josh Turow from his days at Video Magic&Sneak Preview when video rentals were running rampant, and he would call you at your home with a friendly reminder to return your late video. And now my conversation with Josh Turow. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I have to know this. How long have you been in Burlingame? 45 years or so, or longer?
I moved to Burlingame in 1976, so we're coming up on 50.
Coming up on 50. So how does a guy, you grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, right? Is that correct?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and then lived in the southern part of Maryland near Washington, D.C. And when I was 17, I left high school. My father and mother were divorced. My father lived in San Francisco, was in the clothing business. I was going to come out here and become a photographer and go to a school in Santa Barbara called Brooks Institute. Ended up living at North Park Apartments in Burlingame in 1976. Never went to college.
So you were 17 or 18 when you came out here?
17.
And you were out here by yourself? Your dad was in the city?
That's correct.
How did you happen to land in Burlingame at North Park? How does that happen?
I don't think he wanted me near him. I'm not quite sure. No, actually, I did live in San Francisco for a short time, and I didn't care for the city life, the hills, and my first car was a stick shift, and that was not an easy transition for me.
Yeah, not in the city anyway.
No.
Right.
So, Burlingame was the suburb and nearby. At that time, less traffic and an off-ramp at Franklin Avenue and so on. So I ended up moving down here.
That's crazy. Had you completed high school back in Baltimore, or did you complete it out here in California?
I completed high school back east.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So how did you get into the video rental business? How did that all come about?
Interestingly enough, I sort of have a dual personality where I'm old school and old-fashioned in many ways, but yet I love tech, gadgets, and things like that. And I bought a video recorder when they were first kind of released, just after the Betamax, and I bought a VHS machine. Well, there really wasn't any place to get videos or do anything like that. And in 1980, there was a gentleman by the name of Gary Andrini, and he opened up a video store at 1404 Burlingame Avenue, which is now the tobacconist shop.
What was the name of that store?
It was called Burlingame Home Video.
Okay, and it was at where the tobacco shop is now, by the flower shop on Burlingame Avenue, right? Or was it on the corner? No, it wasn't on the corner. I got it. Where Don's Burlingame Tobacconist is now. That's
next
correct.
Door to Warby Parker.
Right. Wow. So you worked with him for a while? I mean, what did you do? Go in and apply for a job or something?
He was wanting a little time off, and when you have a small business like that, back in those days, you pretty much worked it yourself. And I worked part-time. I had left working in the family business with my father, who was a clothing manufacturer, and I worked for him part-time. I had some money saved. I enjoyed it, and kind of learned the ropes, and the business grew, and we moved from that location not long after up to 1444 Burlingame Avenue.
Give me kind of a location on where that is. I know you said 1444, but what's around there? Give me some landmarks.
1444 is now Delphina.
Oh, it is. Okay, so same side of the street, just up farther.
Yes, we moved twice. Once from this little tiny 500 square foot store at the time in 1980. Maybe there was 100 videos. Then we moved up to 1444 because there was expansion. There were many other people that were starting to get into the business. And then there was the idea, hey, look, you're going to make more money if you sell video equipment and TVs for people to have. And also, the San Francisco 49ers were becoming the team of the 80s, and people wanted large screen TVs and so on.
Were you selling video recorders also? Like tape machines, I guess is what I'm saying.
We sold cameras, which were two pieces at the time, a camera, and you had over your shoulder, you had a portable recorder. We sold home recorders. We went and did installations at people's houses. At that time, there was no cable in Hillsborough.
What year was that when you say that? Help me with that.
Cable didn't come into Hillsborough probably until maybe 1988.
Wow.
And so from 1980 to 1988, the influx of customers that had nothing but Turow Tower 2, 4, 5, 7, 9 channels, were looking to rent videos, especially if they had kids.
Yeah. Wow. Too much. So you were there for quite a while at that particular location, renting videos, but also selling equipment and stuff like that.
Right. We became pretty large, and at that time there was 2 formats. There was the original beta format and there was the VHS format.
Yeah.
And we had both because people had some of each. And then beta sort of died out. And then a couple of years later, we moved into the cavernous S. Christian of Copenhagen, which is next door to the AT&T building that's been there forever.
So that was just a little bit farther up the street then.
Correct. That was at 1462 where Bevmo is now.
You were there.
Yep.
Doing the same thing, selling the same kind of product?
We were selling more and more, and we even sold satellite dishes to many of the homes of people in Hillsborough.
So there's a real learning curve for you there, though, right? To get used to all this equipment and know this equipment and be able to sell it?
Yes.
Were you partners with Gary at this time or just working with Gary?
I was managing the store, and
Right.
he was, he had a very outgoing personality, and, he was running around creating relationships. He did have a partner in other stores, and I was managing the store.
But you guys got along very well, hit it
Yes.
off really well.
And we still, to this day, keep in touch. He's retired now, lives in Gilroy, has grandchildren, and great guy.
Okay. You just answered some of my questions for me without even asking, so that's terrific.
I'm sorry to get
Okay.
ahead.
No, that's okay. Okay. So tell me some of the memories you have of Burlingame Avenue at that time. Who were some of the other tenants around you? Because I love hearing these landmark stores.
Well, you still have a couple in business, believe it or not. Like Paper Caper was a neighbor of ours, and they're still there.
Yeah.
They're owned by different people. At the time, it was a couple of doctors' wives were looking for something to do, and they started where you could get wedding invitations and birthday cards and things like that. And they kind of had a unique set of inventory that brought them higher end clientele.
Yeah, they're still around. They've been around a long time.
They are
You're right.
still around. And then, you also have that moved up and down the avenue, Morning Glory,
Yep.
who, they've been there, I think, close to half a decade.
Yeah, the girls just went over 50 years now, 51 years,
Yes,
something like
and
that.
they used to actually buy clothing from my father's manufacturing
That's
business.
crazy.
So that, goes back quite a ways as well. And Baskin-Robbins has been in the same location probably that long as well.
Yeah, somebody told me they might be one of the longest standing businesses on Burlingame Avenue, and I've kind of overlooked that, to be honest with you, because I'm trying to find the oldest one. Anyway.
Yeah, it is possible. They have been there,
around
and
forever.
that's the Montalvo family, and I
Yeah.
believe she still owns it.
Boy, that's crazy.
And that's a very, very tough business, to get kids to serve ice cream, and they're doing other
it's
things.
getting-
My brother worked at Baskin-Robbins, and I think he ate more than he sold.
Okay, so I've got in my notes here, in the 1986, you opened your own video store
Right, so what
called
happened?
Video Magic?
That's correct. What happened was Gary Andrini, who had Burlingame Home Video, had partners, and because of the other stores and their other locations, they decided to close the store. I said, well, what am I going to do for work? And I ended up finding somebody to be a silent partner.
Great.
I took my credit card. I had about a $5,000 limit,
Yep.
and I bought movies. You couldn't rent them. You did have to buy every piece of inventory you had.
Yeah.
And we went to 401 Primrose, above now Stella Alpina, now on Burlingame Avenue. But
Right.
it was Alpine.
Alpine Inn, Stella Alpina, right?
Right.
You were above them.
We were above them, and we were actually in another space above. June Jackson Travel was another tenant there. And we had Mark Maheron was an insurance broker. His dad started a business in the early 1900s in Burlingame and left the business to Mark. Mark was in the building, and then you had a hair salon, which has changed different names and
Right.
ownerships over the years on the ground floor as well.
So Gina's suntan place wasn't there yet. And I can't think of the name of the place, but
Yeah, I think it's called Sunkissed.
yeah, was that there?
It had just come in. where Mark Maharon was located, and Mark Maharon had passed away.
Okay.
And Gina was an employee, and she ended up buying the business from the original investor and took it over.
Right. And then what about, do you remember there was a place called All That Glitters? Isabel DePaz. Was she was on Primrose, but she's on Broadway now. She's been on
Right.
Broadway for several years.
Right.
Was she around when you were there?
Yes.
She
She was around, and she was very. I became friendly with her and a few of the other merchants as well, and she was very gregarious personality and had a huge collection of vintage faux jewelry.
Yeah.
And so she always had the most decorative windows, and she
Still does a great job on Broadway.
She does. She
Yeah.
does. I have to say it's not the same location being next to a gas station on Broadway versus where she was.
I know.
And I don't think she had a choice to move. She stayed as long as she could, and she was great for the community.
She
and
wasn't.
Still is.
She's still a sweetheart. Okay, so moving from the Avenue, you were working with Gary, and you got your own business, and now you're above, you're over by the library and that little area there. It kind of had to be a little bit of a foot traffic shock for you, didn't it? I mean, the buzz of the Burlingame Avenue that area where you were didn't have that same kind of buzz, did it?
You're exactly right. In those days, the one thing that sort of was a plus and a minus to this day, and back then, one of the main problems in Burlingame is parking.
Parking. There's no parking for you. Yeah. I mean,
and back then, Burlingame Avenue was 1 hour free on the meters.
Right.
Which was not
good point.
Not regularly enforced.
Yeah.
And what happened was many employees took advantage of parking right in front of they didn't want to walk at all.
I know.
And they would park right in front of their business, which drove business sort of to me because we had
Interesting.
parking and we were across the street from the library.
Okay.
We're fortunate enough to have had a gorgeous remodel, although that was a very difficult transition for me because of all the trucks and the dirt and everything else.
They tied up ways to go.
Right. But there's only so many parking spaces, but you're in and out of a video store in a short amount of time, unless you came in my video store where I played with kids who now have kids who have kids, so I don't want to age myself, but I might need a walker to get out of here.
So how old were you back in that, when you took over when you opened Video Magic?
In my 20s.
In your 20s. Were you working 6 and 7 days a week?
I worked 6 and 7 days a week in the beginning, actually 7.
Yeah.
And at some point, whether it was financially or I was just going to exhaust myself, I ended up finding students that worked part-time for me to give me a day off.
A little bit of relief.
Yes.
Right. Wow. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the inventory and the mechanics of the video business, and you kind of touched on a little bit, but I'm going to ask you about your inventory, and I think you said it, but we'll bring it back again. So you had to buy the videos. You couldn't rent the videos from the distributor. You had to buy them. Is that how that worked?
That's correct. Each video that came out averaged a $50 wholesale cost. And so at the time when we started, there was no other competition, and you bought one video of a title, And so if you bought the newest, latest, greatest release, you spent $50, and when it got leased out, you hoped it got returned on time, and you'd turn it over and rent it again and again and again.
And then it would pay for itself eventually. Then eventually you start making a profit on that.
Exactly. Although there is one interesting side note that renting videos is a service, and there's not supposed to be a sales tax on a service because the word sales is for a sale. However, the IRS started seeing video stores popping up across the country, and they decided...
This is a great way to raise some revenue.
They decided not only to start charging, but they back-charged everybody in the video business, asked for their books, and back-charged them sales tax, which put out many, many, many stores across the country.
Oh, man, that took a chunk out of the cash flow.
Yeah, a lot of stores just said, I'm going to close, and they closed.
Okay. So back to renting, and what if you wanted to buy a new video, right? A new movie came out. What happens with the old ones? You just have to hang on to them, or would you have a closeout sale on something like?
You got to find more and more space as your inventory grows, because some people might want to revisit Citizen Kane.
Right.
It's not a new movie, but it may be the greatest movie of all time in someone's opinion. So you create an inventory, and then you start creating sections, and then you grow, and then. It's a constant influx of money on both sides, in and out. And, obviously the game is to try and make more than you're spending.
Yeah. So when you bought your videos from a distributorship, was there terms on that? Would they give you 30 days or anything like that, or longer than that or shorter than that?
It depends upon your credit worthiness and how long you've been doing business. Some people were COD when UPS drivers used to carry cash.
He just stands there with his hand open, right?
Yes,
okay.
right.
Wow.
You had to be prepared.
Did you have closeouts on videos, though? Did you ever close some out?
Yes. And when we started buying multiple copies, we would try and keep one of everything. But when we started buying, you never want to sell one of the James Bond collection. God forbid you're out of one.
Yeah.
But if you have something that is, you got two of, or is just not renting and you need shelf space, yes, we would sell those.
All right, so you stayed at 401 Primrose, that 401 Primrose location until 1996. That was a 10-year span you had there.
Yes.
A 10-year run.
I'd call that a good run.
I think that's a real good run. Then you decided to merge with Sneak Preview, located at the other end of Primrose at 220 Primrose. That's right there by Howard Avenue, right?
I felt it was easier to change the address on my business card rather than, just the numbers rather than. So I went from 401 Primrose to 220 Primrose.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so yes, I actually, something that you probably don't know, we've had lots of conversations and know each other pretty well, but I some way, somehow reached out because many stores had opened by that time. And Rourke's, where we all bought our wedding gifts for people at very good prices for very high-end quality merchandise, many of your customers, I would guess.
And for our listeners out there, some of them are new to Burlingame. Rourke's was where Apple Store is right now, isn't it? Where the Apple Store is? No, I'm sorry.
Pet Food Express.
It's farther in. Pet Food Express, right?
Right. But Rourke's was the end-all, be-all, where you would go and buy specialty items that were...
Oh, remember it well. Everybody got a wedding gift from there, from our family.
That's where... So you got nice wedding gifts.
Yeah.
So, but what happened was, amongst other stores that decided to go in the video rental business, that store became, when the owners of Rourke's closed, they rented that out to Blockbuster. And Blockbuster started swaying customers and so on, of course, with their size of inventory and massive store size compared to my little store. What I had was customer service. I became known as, come to me and I know what kind of movies you like. I know what kind of movies to recommend. I watched somewhere between 30 and 60 movies a week.
That's wild,
and
man.
I have to say, after a while, I only watched the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I get it, right.
But
you got a flavor of the movie.
Pretty much. If you got a 2-hour movie and in 20 minutes, I should know something. But that being said, I decided, and Blockbuster was started by a gentleman by the name of Wayne Huizenga, who started the Florida Marlins and all of that.
Yeah,
he was
a lot
a billionaire.
of sports franchises.
Yes. So I somehow got a hold of his office when I was deciding that this may be the end for me. What do I do? Before I went to Sneak Preview. And I got a hold of somebody, and I didn't speak with him, but I spoke to somebody in the higher up, and I said, look, I had a very valuable inventory because at that time, the Disney movies were only made once every 7 years for the classics. So if you didn't have one,
you weren't going to get one for a while.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I called and I said, look, I'd like to sell my inventory to you, and I'd like to be the manager of your store and bring you a lot of business. And they said, well, we've never had to buy a store before. Usually when we open, you close. However...
Jesus.
Yeah, they were direct, but they did say, however, you've got I've got to give you credit. We're going to consider this. And they made me an offer, and I turned it down from the corporate standpoint. And then I went to Sneak Preview, who was a gentleman by the name of Chim Kim, a Korean gentleman, and broken English, so on. But he just modeled his store after Blockbuster.
And that was a big store, as I recall.
7,000 square feet. It was Arthur's Toy Town before that.
I remember that, yes. Arthur's Toy Town.
I think you remember it well because you
my
probably
dad's
had
store
a
was
store
next
right
door.
Next door.
Okay.
Yeah. So you probably played in there and watched. So
let me ask you something, though, about the video business before this gets by me. When you had Video Magic and even Sneak Preview, were you selling memberships, that kind of thing? Was it?
That started with Burlingame Home Video, the first.
Oh, it did?
Yes. And that was an interesting way of making money.
Yeah.
And because there was no place else to go get a video, And because you had a captive audience in a small town, no pun intended.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
You could sell a membership for $50 per year.
Oh, buy it.
And you get 2 free rentals for that. And then you get rentals at half price. So your rentals at that time, believe it or not, were $5 instead of $10 for 2 days. And you were paying a membership fee. So the profit margin was both memberships and the cost of the video rentals versus the cost of the buying of the product for us wholesale. It never lowered.
Yeah.
So
did you get a lot of memberships? Did a lot of folks go the membership route then?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. There was no other way to save money, and it made sense.
Yeah. Wow. Did you do that at Sneak Preview too? Is that pretty much what went on in the video rental business?
No. Once all the stores opened up, they all it went to the let's lower, our prices under this guy, and let's get rid of membership. Blockbuster had a sort of a sneaky kind of a deal with, like where they had a card where you rent a certain number. It's like buying 8 ice cream cones or 10, buying 9, getting your 10th free, things like that. But no, the membership went by the wayside by the time I opened my store. All right,
tell us a little bit about Sneak Preview then. Did you merge with him? Did you become a partner with him, or did you just work with him? How did that work?
It was not a formalized deal. What I did was I became the manager. And I had to come in undercover, believe it or not, because we didn't want the employees to know who I was or my affiliation from where I was at. And we knew they wouldn't know. So I came in as an employee and to watch them. And all of them quit within a week because they kind of caught on to me, and they caught on to the fact that the owner wasn't present, but some of them were not above board or, great at doing what they should be doing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say anything badly about them, but there's reasons things happen like that.
I get it, yeah.
And I had to instantly learn how to do things on a much grander scale in a 7,000 square foot store with a large number of videos, a large number of employees, and a large number of customers rather quickly.
So that was what year now? I'm sorry, I lost.
That's 1996.
Okay, 1996. Man. Videos were about $5. It didn't.
No, at that time the price was he was renting them for around $3.
Okay, pretty good value, right? I mean, that's pretty darn good.
To you, the customer, or to the seller?
To the customer. I mean,
yes.
That's pretty.
Yes.
And what was a late fee charge?
Late fee was $1.50 a day.
Yeah, okay, $1.50 a day, ringing that baby up. We'll get into that a little bit later on.
I'll hold off on that.
Yeah, please do. So, okay, I have somebody that asked when they found out I was going to be talking to you about the video business. They gave me a question to ask you.
All right.
And they said, make sure you ask Josh about the back corner of the store. And I guess that meant the adult video section. And I'm not talking about the Maltese Falcon or Hitchcock's Rear Window or the Bridge over the River Kwai. I'm specifically talking about Stormy Davis type films. Is that correct? That was the corner of the back corner of the store?
Well, before I answer that question, when you said you have a friend that asked you that, I mean, that friend is not sitting in front of me, is it?
No. That's funny.
Yeah, no. We made every attempt to make that entry very secluded to give the privacy of the store or kids or everybody. But yes, that was in the store.
Could one come back there and of age and everything like that? Could one go in there and watch the film for a few minutes, or do you go in there and catch the title and then leave?
No, it was not a peep show.
It wasn't a peep show.
No,
right?
No, it was definitely look at the box, And this isn't like they were looking for, an Oscar-winning film.
Yeah, I get it. So I got a couple more questions on that subject.
Go ahead.
Were adult movie rentals popular?
Let me put it to you this way. We made more on adult movies than we did on regular movies.
Okay. So
they were lower cost.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Lower. So they were cheaper than a Disney rental, is what you're saying.
Right. It costs more to make a Disney movie than it costs to make a Stormy Daniels movie.
Okay.
But
Stormy Daniels, I said Davis.
Well,
thank you.
You're going to use a new name rather than an old name. I don't really recall any of those.
Oh, my gosh, that's great. Okay. One more question or two on that subject, if you don't mind. Any surprise adult video customers, like maybe you would see the president of the XYZ bank down the street or Father so-and-so from the local church. And you don't have to give me names, just anything like that. Do you remember anything that you thought, whoa, this is interesting?
I wish I had known this question in advance because you said I don't have to give you any names. But the simple answer is yes.
Yeah.
There was certainly people that were of that nature, that were curious or otherwise. And they had a way of trying not to enter that room where they would pull me to the side and whisper in my ear, can you just go back and grab me something, from back there? I've never seen that before, but I've heard about it and I'm curious.
I'm curious.
So
okay.
I definitely had that. And those type of people, especially in Burlingame, didn't want to be seen going in there.
No, absolutely not. Okay, last question on the subject. Any female adult video customers?
That's an interesting question because there were always female customers, but certainly the numbers are very strongly in the men's favor. But
but you did have females.
We did have females, but the females always asked seemingly the same question. They would make the same comment. They would say, we're having a bachelorette party. I can't tell you how many bachelorette parties there had to have been that I never heard really happened.
Right. That's great.
And they would also ask me to retrieve a video for them.
Retrieve the video.
Yeah, and they would maybe give me a guideline, of some sort, of their taste or whatever.
Great stuff. Oh, boy. Thank you for sharing that, Josh.
You're welcome.
All right, in 2001, you ended your career in the video business, right? Is that because of the influx of, I guess Netflix must have been coming on at that time, right? And Blockbuster was getting bigger. Is that why you left the business?
We were in the generation of going from the original of Betamax to VHS to DVDs, along with VHS, which were still more predominant and popular. However, Netflix started its company by mailing DVDs with a return envelope and so on. You don't have to leave your house. You go to your mailbox, get your video, put it back in your mailbox. You could rent a few at a time. They had a membership. And that started, I probably should have financially maybe left the business years before that. I was probably offered some jobs I should have taken. But I loved dealing with, just like yourself,
right.
When you worked at Molly Stone's, and I watched you work, and we interacted as well. We loved dealing with families.
Yeah.
And I saw people that from every walk of life that had children or families. In the video business, I always used to jokingly say, and you may have said this too, my least favorite time of year is the day before Thanksgiving to the day after New Year's. and the reason being is that you all had all the college kids home, you had all the, and all these people were coming in as families getting ready to watch. Back in those days, I was born in a time when we sat around and had dinner as a family.
Yeah.
That doesn't probably happen as much anymore.
Not too much anymore.
And this was a time when you had these college kids home, or you had this school break or things like that, where people watched movies together, and then all the adult kids went out to the bars at night, sort of thing. But I did see the writing on the wall, and I thought to myself, well, I'm not getting any younger. I've had a great run.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed it, but I'm not going to find the next thing unless I actually just put a pin in this balloon, and that's what I did. And that was right after 9/11.
Yeah. Was that, did the decline of video rentals start then, or had it started earlier? I mean, how much longer was Sneak Preview around?
Well, the decline sort of started with Netflix, with the beginning of streaming. It just started with satellite dishes, with other competition. You could go to Costco and you could buy movies at Costco at a lower wholesale price than I was paying.
Wow.
So I ended up going to Costco and buying my movies after a while.
I bet.
So it was sort of kind of a trickle-down effect, like a snowball coming down a hill. And it just ended up happening generically, over that period of time.
How much longer was Sneak Preview around after you left?
Sneak Preview was only around a few more months after that, and it turned into a rug store. There was Chicken next to that store, and there was Yanni's Greek restaurant. There was the shoe repair place. That was all one building, which is now the studio shop. And the owner of that building, had a way that he could do whatever he wanted to do. And he ended up deciding to sell the building, and he sold it to Cliff Woods, who owned Chicken. And
that was the great rotisserie chicken
that everybody that is old enough to remember it frequented it to take out.
Yeah.
It was, but his rotisserie burnt the building down.
That was the cause of the fire.
Yes, the grease, trap or whatever.
Right.
Man, I can't say that was the cause. I'm not a fireman or reading the report, but the building was so old that the wood was like kerosene soaked. And so even if it was just a small thing, that it wasn't really their fault.
Yeah.
That's where it started.
Did you know him?
Yes.
What was his name again?
Cliff Wood.
Cliff Wood. He had another store halfway around the world, right? The Cayman Islands?
Still exists.
It still exists.
Yes.
How do you have a store in Burlingame and then have one halfway around the world? I don't understand that.
You're asking the wrong person. But the only thing I can tell you is that the store in the Cayman Islands gets hit by a hurricane, and they don't have to go to City Hall. They can build a store back in 2 weeks. And in Burlingame, they did try and reopen.
Oh,
and
really?
They could not reopen, certainly in the same location, and they couldn't find another location suitable, so they picked up the family and they moved.
Wow. Jeez, that's a great story. Man. And you talk about the shoe repair that was just down the street too, right?
Which is another funny little side note of the story.
Is that the Studio One gallery now?
Yes, that's the Studio One gallery. There's another shoe store next to Pete Umland's smoke shop on the corner of on Primrose, which was there. There was a flower stand. There was a shoe repair. And the man in the shoe repair was a little bit older, and he was kind of cantankerous. He wasn't always all that friendly, but he was great at his job.
Uh-huh.
And I always heard stories of people saying, I'm not going to do business here. There's a guy right down the street. Mm-hmm. And the guy would say, okay, see you later, leave. Well, I was pretty friendly with the guy. I come to find out that the store down the street was owned by his son.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right. We'll move out of video.
All right.
And thank you for all those good memories.
And bring back good memories to me, too. I loved that business. I still see some of those people today.
Yeah.
And it's a great memory.
Great stuff. Let's talk about your best friend.
Let's do it.
Number 22, for our listeners out there, the retired great first baseman from the San Francisco Giants. Probably at that time the sweetest swing in baseball, and maybe still the sweetest swing in baseball, Will Clark, your best friend.
Yes.
How the heck does that happen, man? I know he came to the Giants in 86. You opened your video Magic in 86. Was there some kind of magic that went on there or something, or what? I mean, how does that happen?
Prior to that, in 84, Mike Krukow, the announcer, who was still playing, was traded from Philadelphia, for all people, but he was traded for Joe Morgan.
Oh, my gosh.
Famous Joe Morgan.
Yeah.
And he came here, and he lived in San Mateo Park on Occidental in a rental house. And it had a downstairs bachelor apartment. And he was, older in his career, a veteran, and he decided that he needed a place to start the season, but he had family in Southern California, and they were still in school, his children, until, he was until June. Mm-hmm. And so he still had April, May, June to live in a place. And he would live there, and it was kind of empty, so when Will came out, he didn't know Will. Here's a guy from, Mississippi State, high-pitched Southern accent, wild personality, and he's had, he won many awards. He played in the before it was an event. He played on the Olympic team with Mark McGuire and Rafael Palmeiro and Jeff Brantley.
Great team.
Yep, and so he was at Candlestick in 1984, and I saw him there. I didn't know him at the time. In 86, Krukow had this downstairs apartment, and he said, let me give you a place to live, And he lived there for a short time. But Mike, as soon as his kids got there, he had a lot of kids and his wife, what's a young single guy going to do? So he introduced him to me because while Mike was single without his family, he rented videos from me.
He came over to Video Magic? Is that what you're saying? Or the place on the Avenue?
Home Video.
The place on the Avenue.
Right.
Wow.
And then he brought Will in with him in 86 to Video Magic. And we instantly hit it off. And so let's go out for a drink. Well, where did everybody go for a drink? Well, one of a few places, one of them being La Piñata.
Yeah.
And we hit it off from there and got together all the time when he was in town. And a short time after that, we ended up renting a house together. And I still kept my house, during the off season, and during the season, he and I lived together for his 6 seasons with the Giants.
Where was that house?
That house, well, he rented briefly the house on Occidental, and then we had a house on Upland in Hillsborough.
Ah, nice little neighborhood.
It was a nice neighborhood, and it was kind of like an On Golden Pond story. There was an older couple there. They did smell like mothballs, and in a good way.
Okay.
And they would spend the summers back in Maine, and it was perfect timing. They would rent a furnished house to Will, and Will had 2 rules. One was make sure that you have the refrigerator full of Coors Light.
Yeah.
And make sure the place is clean. You don't owe any rent.
Coors Light, is that still his beverage of choice?
Still is.
That's funny.
It still is, and Jack Daniels once in a while.
Okay, Jack Daniels once in a while. How long were you guys roommates then? How many years?
We were roommates almost 6 years.
No kidding. Wow, boy.
We lived there, and then for a short time, we lived on Hillsborough Boulevard.
All right, so there's folklore in Burlingame that one of the places you guys lived at was owned by one of the Giants owners. Is that true or not?
That is not true.
Okay, we'll move on from that then, okay? Oh, man, great stories. Let's talk about the day Will retired.
Okay.
Because I saw it on television. I was watching the game, and, everybody wants to see they retired his number, right? You happened to be there that day.
I was lucky enough to be actually on the field.
Tell us about it.
I don't know. I even asked him. I said, "What would I be doing on the field?" I didn't play with you. And being the off-field person that he is, people know him as on-field mostly. Yeah. Just one of the warmest, nicest, most generous people. And he turned to me and he said, "If it weren't for you, amongst a few others, I would not be having this happen."
Wow.
And I was one of the people, along with Eric Burns, that got T-shirts made that said "Retire 22" and all of that. But I didn't think I deserved to be on the field, but I wasn't going to turn it down.
I think a best friend should be on the field. That's great.
It was quite a moment, and he even had a speech that he spoke about me.
Yeah.
In the speech that I'm glad I had dark glasses on.
Yeah.
And one of the best speeches I've ever seen, and one of the greatest.
He
ceremonies.
was wonderful with that speech. But the funny thing is my youngest son and myself are watching. I go, "There's Josh."
It's nice to be recognized other than Will.
Oh, it's funny though. So he now lives in Prairieville, Louisiana. Is that right?
Yeah, Prairieville is north of New Orleans, and Katrina pushed him out of New Orleans.
It did. Okay. Is he still doing any work for the Giants?
He is a marketing assistant or special ambassador and somewhat of a coach. He's in Eugene, Oregon right now with the minor league team. He goes to Richmond, Virginia. He goes to Scottsdale. He goes to San Jose. Wherever they need him, he goes. And if they need him in the big league, he'll come out for that. He comes out several times a year. He has a son who's on the spectrum of autism, and so he has an autism night that the proceeds go to Autism Speaks.
Terrific.
That he's been involved with for many, many, many years and raised a lot of money. And so he'll do that. He'll, appear at functions, and then he's always at the ballpark when he's in town.
How often do you guys get together then? Or do you talk
get together
often?
We talk almost daily.
Yeah.
And we get together approximately 6 times a year. And I also go down he has a ranch in Mississippi, and I also go down there once a year, and we hunt and fish and, just sit around and look at nature.
Yeah. Terrific story. Boy. Okay. Do I have anything else for Will Clark here? Well, let's see. Roommates, right? Okay. I think, what I'd like to do now, boy, good story. Oh, I know. I have one memory of Will. The day you brought him into Molly Stone's to meet me.
I was wondering
and we
when
got
you were
to
gonna
take
get
a
to
picture. That was a special day, man. That was a special moment.
It surprised you, didn't it?
Because it did. Because, you told me, you'd always say to me, I'm bringing him in here one day. But you know what? I thought, okay, Josh, right? You brought him in. And when he walks in, he goes, wow, what is, his high-pitched voice. What a store. So cool. We took a picture right there at the front. Yeah, I still have that, man. That's a great photo, and thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I think I did that for you, and I know that Juan was a big fan. And who's still there, I believe.
Yes.
And I got him a picture as well, and he still to this day is appreciative of that. And will love doing that.
Oh, that was great stuff, man. So, all right, we're going to talk about one more legendary moment here in Burlingame with you. You've been playing basketball for a long, long time. You and a bunch of other guys, and our friend John Crosby's part of that, right?
That's correct.
Right. 40-something years playing at Crocker Middle School in Hillsborough. Is that correct?
We started out at Victoria Park around the corner from your house.
Yeah, right.
And when they had 2 hoops.
Yeah.
They took one down many years ago.
Yep.
And I think it was because of the hoodlums that were banging on the rims or something.
Yep, right.
But we started there, and our knees just didn't like this cement. And somebody got a hold of one of the people at Crocker and found out you were able to rent the gym. And at that time, it was all doctors and lawyers. And some way, somehow, there was about 4 of us that are still playing. Thank goodness.
So there's 4 of you left.
There's about 4 of the old timers left that our knees are still holding out, as in the rest of our bodies. John being one of them. He doesn't play as much. He still plays. But it was interesting because here you got a video store guy, and here you have a mortuary, mortician.
Yep.
With all these doctors and lawyers. And the funny thing is that when somebody would fall down on the court, you'd have a lawyer run over and say, "Do you need a card?"
Get out of here.
And then you'd have a doctor run over and say, "Do you need help?" And then, of course, before I could get there, John Crosby would go there as a mortician and say, "Do you need a card?"
Yeah.
And I would say, "While you're healing, do you need to rent some videos?"
You guys are screwballs, man. No way. That's a good story.
And the 4 guys that are still left, I mean, there are some guys that aren't left. They're still, from, well, we have a congressman. We have Kevin Mullen. We have
Does Kevin play with you guys?
He sure does. He's a regular.
My wife taught him in at 7th or 8th grade at St. Veronica's in South City when she was up there.
And his dad was a teacher, so I'm sure they knew each other.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And he is a very, very devout regular, and I don't know how he works it flying back and forth, but he is there almost every week.
How did you guys manage to fit him in? I mean, how does somebody know that there's something going on at Crocker and you're playing hoops
It's
there?
word of mouth, and we basically want to have a control group so that we can all get out of there safe and sound and go to work or go to our families and not be injured or anything like that. So it's a trial basis by that word of mouth. First time you come in and it's a tryout for both sides. And, if somebody's too aggressive, they're not invited back. If somebody seems like they're a fit, they're invited back.
Do you allow girls to play, or is it just a guy thing?
Well, we would allow girls to play, and we've played with a couple of gals. There was a great player from Burlingame High School named Barb Beanie. Mm-hmm. She played with us a little bit. John's daughter was an All-American.
Jamie.
She played with us a little bit. But that's about it for the girls.
Right.
So if there's any women out there that want to play some rec basketball, get a hold of me.
So you mentioned attorneys. I just know one that played with you guys, the great Loggy Anderson. He's not playing anymore, right?
Loggy's body gave out on him for basketball.
Right.
And which he's probably still sad about. When you do something that you love that much as a hobby, and you're not able to do it anymore, it is a little bit difficult. There is a cohort of his that still plays with us, and his name is Mark Casanego.
Oh, Mark plays with you guys?
He does.
So, okay, my wife again, Kathy, taught his children at St. Charles when she was down at St. Charles.
San Carlos.
San Carlos, right. That is so funny.
Yep,
Mark,
he plays.
I still see Mark every day. Well, whenever I pinch it at Molly's, I see Mark at lunchtime.
He still plays with us every week. And another name that used to play with us that doesn't play with us any longer, Mike Harvey.
Mike Harvey. Or were any of these guys ballers? I mean, could they play? Most of these guys play, or are they just kind of... you don't have to mention names.
I have to be politically correct.
You do have to be politically correct.
We all have our skill set, and some are really good at some things, and some are really good at others.
Okay, here's a question for you. I always know that John was a great player at Sarah and in college. What about you? Were you a high school player?
I was a high school player. I played the bench.
So, okay.
I'm vertically challenged.
Yeah, got it. So do you have a go-to shot? I mean, do you have a 10-foot pull-up jumper or anything like that? Or do you dribble well? Can you pass well or what?
I can do all those things well, but not all at the same time on any given day. We fit really well as a group. And another name, by the way, I got to mention three more names.
Please, I want you to.
One of which is Michael Brownrigg.
Oh my gosh, Michael comes up there?
He plays with us regularly, and he enjoys it.
This is on
as well.
Sundays, right?
That's correct.
And what time?
Well, I don't want to have a crew of people.
No,
up there,
I'm
but-
coming up to watch someday. I have
we will
to see
be there
everybody.
Sunday, and we start at 8:30 in the morning.
You do. What times it usually wrap up?
By
10:30?
Yeah, by 10:30, we're all laying on the ground.
Yeah, that's amazing. How many guys will actually turn out for a Sunday, give or take?
We hope 10 to 12.
Yeah, so you can get
So we want
two
some
teams playing full
Well,
court.
we know one team, two, against each other, and
Right.
we'd like to have
A couple
subs.
of guys sub in and sub out,
Yes.
right? But you do play full court.
We do play full court.
That's amazing. No ref. You're reffing yourself, right? Self-ref.
Offense makes the calls. That's right. And another two names I would
Yep.
need to mention. One still plays. He mostly plays in South City. Would be Jim Wagstaff,
I don't think I know Jim. Okay.
district attorney,
Oh, great. Okay, maybe I
San
should
Mateo
know him.
County.
Yep,
You
okay.
know, it's good that you don't know that name.
Yeah,
then.
that's right.
And the other would be Doc Shepler.
Oh, gosh, Doc, the great. He was on a show last year. Yeah, Doc is amazing.
And you probably know the history of his family and his
Absolutely.
dad. You know,
On
and you
Broadway.
probably know his real name. So
Ernie.
Yeah, exactly. So Doc was and probably still is a tremendous player.
Absolutely.
He's a better coach maybe than player, and he was a tremendous player. And he's also a tremendous human being. I
is.
used to go to Burlingame Athletic Club, which was first called Burlingame Racquetball Club, over on Rollins Road.
Is that now Prime? No, next door.
No, it's closed. This is on Rollins. Off of Old Bayshore.
Okay.
Prime Athletic Club and the one next to it, which I'm failing to remember the name.
Royal
of that,
Racquet
Royal
Club.
combined, but Burlingame Racquetball Club started by Ken Edwards, who was in the drapery business. It had a full court, half court. And we had great players like Papa George,
Yep.
who was a great player, and Doc Shepler played,
Yeah.
and John Crosby played, and these guys would only take one step and turn and shoot because it was a half full court.
Right.
But we had some really great times. And Doc, who's gone on to teach professionals, be a coach at Pinewood,
Done great at Pinewood.
be great to anybody that needed tips, especially on free throw shooting. And you asked about what was I good at. Well, I have one of the most unorthodox shots. I shoot one-handed. There was I can only think of one pro by the name of George McGinnis that did that. Well,
There you go. The great George McGinnis.
I was never going to be pro, and but I did shoot one-handed. I don't know how I learned that shot.
Yeah.
But if it goes in, that's all that matters.
Yeah. How did you find out about that? I mean, was it just word of mouth, or did you bump into John Crosby one day and he said, "You want to shoot some hoop with us," or what? How did that
Actually,
work?
I brought John along. Someone came in the video store that was either a doctor or a lawyer, and said, some way, somehow, we got into the conversation and said they needed players, and I went up after work because they were playing on Wednesday nights at the time, and
Wow.
Sunday, and I went up after work and I was able to play before and after work, and it was on Sunday morning or on Wednesday evening. And that group is transitioned to where some guys have either aged out, like Barry Emanuel's another guy that played with us, a local guy. There was a number of other doctors that played with us. We've had a really good run there. We've been lucky enough to be able to play there. And the good news about it is we're lucky enough to play there, and the money we pay to play there helps the rec department and allows the school to do a lot of things with that money for the school. So
I mean, it's legendary. 40-something years. How many years? It's over 40, isn't it?
It's about 40.
Yeah, because I hear about it from other people, just in conversations, and I go, "What? This is crazy, man! You guys have been playing for so long."
We've even played with the firefighters who come up there from
Okay,
time to
I have
time
a
as well.
question for you then.
Okay.
More Burlingame folklore.
All right.
It's rumored that Chris Mullin, the great Hall of Famer from the Golden State Warriors, has been playing up there once in a while. Is that true or not?
That is 100% true. I have a picture with him. I was able to get him to come there through another one of our players by the name of Jim Davidson, who at the time was a part owner of the Warriors and friends with Chris. So I said, let's surprise the guys and get Chris to come out. And Chris lives in the East Bay.
Yeah.
And he got him to come out. And he got there early. And I'm going to give you two quick funny stories.
Yeah.
One was he was shooting from about a foot away from the basket as I was chatting with him before the guys got there. And it was swish, swish, swish,
Right.
from a foot away.
Right. Got
Okay.
it.
And he's tall enough. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, so I finally turned to him, and he's a lefty like myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm, mostly lefty, but I'm ambidextrous to some degree. Depends upon who you ask.
Yeah.
And I said, Chris, why don't you move away from the basket? And he said, here. And he threw me the ball, and it was 16-pound medicine basketball.
Oh, that he was going swish with.
And that's how their wrist is so
my-
strong
right.
to shoot it from 40 feet.
Yeah.
And he said, go ahead and shoot it, but don't hit the rim because it will hurt the iron.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm not going to intend to hit the rim, but I can't guarantee it. My first shot didn't even get to the rim. And after my second shot bounced on the rim and went in, I said, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that was it. My second quick story about that was that game. I said to him, he was on my team. I said, I was kind of a point guard. I said, I would like to do one thing. I'd like to dribble the ball up the court, and I'd like you to come up behind me, and I'm going to pass you the ball behind my back, bounce pass at half court, and I'd like you to shoot it. I did. It went in.
Oh my gosh.
And the next thing was,
Wow.
in those days, and this is a bittersweet story for me to tell, and that was John Crosby had his son, Cody, playing with us. May he rest in peace.
Absolutely.
Left us way too soon, but another topic. He played with us. He was a very good player.
Yeah.
And he played football at Burlingame High School and so on. I'm sure you've interviewed John to hear all that.
Yep.
He played that day with Chris, and Chris guarded him, Chris Mullen. And Cody shot inside and had a very interesting move, a very weird shot, made my shot look good. His shot was very abnormal. And Chris guarded him. And so Cody took his first shot from about 30 feet, and it went in. And Chris went, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah,
Then, so that Chris couldn't block his shot, Chris took him down the court. He shot, whatever. Then Cody brought the ball back, and from about 32 or 33 feet, so that Chris couldn't get to him, he shot it. It went in.
Hits another one. Wow.
Hits another one.
Okay.
And then he did it again from further out. 3 in a row from that. To this day, years later, Chris says to his friend Jim Davidson, how's that guy doing that just I could not get to his shot? Yeah. I think his name was Cody. He was so good that day, and what a memory for us all to carry with us that we were able to witness it, and what a great day for Cody, who was an unassuming guy and, just kind of smiled and really didn't make a big deal about it.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, boy. Okay, we're getting close. This is kind of my wrap-up time.
All right.
When you're not a video now. You're not when you're not fishing and hunting with Will Clark. What are you doing nowadays, Josh?
Well, I own Baywood Capital Property Management, which is a property management company for people that have investment properties, apartment buildings, single-family houses, things like that.
Located here on Primrose.
I have to be on Primrose. I'm now in the middle I went from 401 to 220. I'm now at 330 Primrose. And have been there now for almost 25 years.
No, almost 25 years.
And so that is what I do. That job is a 7-day-a-week job when you do property management, to do it well.
Yep.
And not every day, all the hours of the day, but it is a demanding job.
Yep.
And I am proud of it, and I enjoy it. And I enjoy interacting with the landlords and the tenants, and it has been good to me. And it was a good segue that I got into. And so I do that. And then my hobby, which is why the store was named Video Magic, is I am a hobbyist magician.
Yeah.
I used to perform at Toll's Restaurant.
You used to perform at Molly Stone's, okay? Ad lib. You and
true.
Bruce Horn, okay?
That's true. We did used to do that for, when it was a little bit slow, we'd do it for the checkers and yourself. And we did do it at Toll's. We did it tableside at Toll's
gosh.
After Albie owned Toll's, and it was a fish place.
Yep.
We did it there at night. And to this day, we still do it. I have a little bit of magic on my YouTube channel. And I still do it, for friends and whatnot. So I do that. I have a dog that I care for with my wife, Lynette, and we travel a little bit. She's from Canada. the furthest part east of Canada you can get, Newfoundland, Canada.
Yeah.
And so I got married late in life.
Yeah, I was going to say,
that.
for the longest time, you were one of the peninsula's most eligible bachelors, right? You've been, married about, 6 years now?
I have been married 6 years, and I appreciate you saying eligible, most eligible bachelors versus being single. But
See?
everybody knows you in a small town.
So let me ask you something. How does somebody get a hold of you if they want a little magic show for their kids or something like that? What do they do? How do they? Is there an Instagram they follow, or
I don't really promote that.
Yeah.
Although Bruce and I do it together as a team.
Yeah.
But
if somebody wanted to do it for a birthday party, how is it? Word of mouth? Then I'd have to give you a call and say, "Hey, I got my nephews or my grandsons are in town. How about a little magic show?"
Or somebody could reach me through Baywood Capital Property Management.
Right. Yeah. Terrific. Boy. Okay, man, that was great. We covered a lot of ground today, Josh.
We did cover a lot of ground. I appreciate it. There is a lot more that we could have covered.
Oh, man, you could have gone on forever on Burlingame Avenue. I know you could have, okay?
Yep, I could. I would just like to point out a few
go right ahead.
The long-time Burlingame businesses that are still in business to this day.
I think you should. That's what it's about.
I'm going to probably forget a couple, and I apologize in advance, but I'd like to start out with Morning Glory.
Yep.
Who's been in business for half a decade, who did business with my father's clothing manufacturing company back in the 70s.
Paulette and Mo Monroe, Burlingame High graduates.
And Wendy Thrasher, who's been there for this entire time.
She's the captain. Yep.
Yes. Next door to them, Paper Caper.
Yep.
Who was started by the wives of two doctors. That's since sold, but that's been there all these years. Baskin Robbins may be the oldest Burlingame Avenue business.
I think somebody told me it could be, and I should look into that, and I will.
That's owned by the Montalvo family, and hats off to them, to be there all these years. And they're not on Burlingame Avenue anymore, but they're a stone's throw away. Burlingame Optical has been there now at least 30 years.
Is that Marcia?
Burlingame Optical is Stuart Brickman.
And Marcia, right? Okay, no? Okay.
No.
Scratch that, folks. Delete it.
Rachel,
okay.
and they've been there a very, very, very long time. And I'm sure there are many others that have been there, and I apologize if I've forgotten them. But those are the ones that come to mind that have been there for a very, very long time. And then one last bit is the cakery was taken over, used to be Ingeborg's.
Yep.
And Ingeborg's was popular for a cake that was angel food cake that was chocolate covered.
Oh my gosh, that sounds delicious.
And when the store closed and became the cakery, which is a little higher end and so on, they didn't have that product. And everybody kept going in there and asking for that product. And finally, they put it on their list of products, and it is one of their best sellers, and it was my wedding cake.
Was it really?
Yes.
Oh, terrific.
And speaking of, it's still not by the same family, but the Nielsen family had Copenhagen for a long time. So I
Ralph and Sherry.
I shout out to them as well.
Big time. Yeah. All right. One last story. You get to tell it.
All right.
How did you and I meet at Molly Stone's when I got there I think I arrived there in 1999, and you came in and introduced yourself to me. How'd that go?
You were very well known for liking to be at the check stands. And I got in line and saw your name tag on.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, there's not too many people with that name.
Right.
A lot of people mispronounce the name of Lucchetti's or Lucetti's or whatever. I still don't know what it's called.
Lucchese.
No, Lucetti's restaurant.
Oh, Lucetti's, right. I got it, yeah.
But I did not mispronounce Lucchese.
No.
And I'll tell you why I did not pronounce Mr. Lucchese. I walked up to you and I was checking, and you were checking out, and you said hello, and you were friendly and so on. And I said, my name's Josh. Do you recognize my name by any chance? And you said, gosh, I'm really sorry. I don't. Should I? And I said, well, you probably should, but maybe it's your wife, Kathy, that would know my voice better. Or maybe you've heard me on your answering machine. And you said, you kind of now looked up at me and stopped doing what you were doing, because now I had your attention.
Right.
And you said, what happened? And I said, well, I'm from Sneak Preview Video, and I'd like to thank you. And you said, why? And I said, well, your family rents videos from me, and they're always late. And I said, I've got a call every week.
Oh, boy.
And so I almost know your number by heart your address by heart.
This is great.
And you proceeded to tell me that your children had an affinity for hiding videos under their beds.
Right. We couldn't find them, man.
And it would take those phone calls for you to spend less money at Sneak Preview Video. So that's kind of the inception.
That's a great story, and
relationship.
we've used that story so many times over the years. It never gets old, and I don't mind sharing it with the world. Okay, it's terrific.
And I appreciate it because it is a great memory, too.
Josh, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I really appreciate it.
We had some fun, man.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
we
you.
did.
All right, buddy. I'd like to thank Josh Turow for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society and sharing some very special and humorous memories of Burlingame. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing. I'm missing my videographer, the great Ray Tyler, as he recovers from a bout with COVID, but he will be back next week. This podcast was recorded on Friday, July 12, 2024 at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this program, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.